A broken heart, a lesson learned, and a life rebuilt from the pieces. Every video we create is a vital piece of life's great puzzle. Subscribe now to feel the journey with us and find where the pieces finally fit.
The champagne flute in my husband's hand caught the chandelier light just as he stood up to make his toast. 200 guests fell silent. Our 25th anniversary. The ballroom of the St. Regis in Boston rented for the evening, every table draped in ivory silk. My father's business partners were there. My daughter Hannah, home from Stanford for the holidays. My mother-in-law, 78 and proud, dabbing her eyes before he'd even spoken a word. I watched my husband clear his throat and smile that smile I'd loved for a quarter century. The one that had convinced me, at 23, to marry a man I'd met in a graduate finance class. The one that had coaxed me through 3 miscarriages before Hannah. The one that had told me, just 6 months ago, that the late nights at the office were because he was finally landing the Peterson account. Then he raised his glass toward a blonde woman sitting 2 seats down from him. A woman I had hired personally as his executive assistant 14 months ago. A woman who, at this very moment, was wearing my grandmother's emerald ring on her left hand. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," my husband said, his voice steady, almost rehearsed. "But I also want to be honest, because the woman I've built my real life with deserves to be celebrated in public." I set down my fork. The room tilted slightly. Not from wine, but from the sudden realization that I was about to become a story, a cautionary tale told at dinner parties for the next decade. "Elena and I have already signed our divorce papers," he continued, gesturing toward me with a kind of dismissive grace, the way you'd acknowledge an employee being let go. "And tonight I'm thrilled to announce my engagement to Chelsea. She's the woman who understands the man I've become." Chelsea stood up. She was 26 years old. She had started at the company as a temp, and on her finger, catching the light in a way that made my stomach turn, was the emerald ring my grandmother had worn on the boat from Ireland in 1948, the ring my mother had passed to me on my wedding day with tears in her eyes, telling me it was meant for Hannah one day. I had not signed any divorce papers. The guests began to murmur, then to laugh nervously, some assuming this was a joke. My mother-in-law stood up, her face white, her hand pressed against her chest. My daughter looked at me with an expression I'll never forget for the rest of my life, half horror, half rage, all of it directed at her father. My husband raised his glass higher. "To Chelsea, to new beginnings, to living authentically." Chelsea giggled, she actually giggled. Then she clinked her glass against his and kissed him on the mouth in front of every person my father had ever done business with. I did what no one expected me to do. I smiled. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table in front of me. I took a slow sip of water. I looked at Hannah and gave her the smallest nod, the kind we had used all her life to mean I'm okay, and I've got this. She understood. She sat back down even as tears started rolling silently down her cheeks. Then I opened the voice memo app on my phone and made sure the little red recording icon was active, because I had learned something about my husband over the past 3 weeks that he did not yet know I had learned. And he had just said enough things in front of 200 witnesses to hang himself. The man whose name I still carried, the man who thought he was destroying me, had no idea that I had spent the last 21 days preparing for this exact moment. I stood up. My knees were shaking, but my voice was not. "Congratulations," I said softly, loud enough for the closest tables to hear. "I hope you'll both be very happy." Then I walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking across the marble, my phone still recording in my handbag, my daughter following 6 steps behind me. In the lobby, Hannah grabbed my elbow. "Mom, what is wrong with you? Why are you just leaving?" "Why aren't you not here?" I said. I kept walking until we reached the valet stand, where I handed over my ticket. "Sweetheart, listen to me. I need you to trust me for the next 72 hours. Can you do that?" She stared at me. 20 years old, smart enough to skip a grade in middle school, sharp enough to see through most people in 10 seconds. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to call your Aunt Vivian tonight. Tell her the anniversary party went exactly the way we thought it would. She'll understand." Hannah's eyes widened. "You knew? You knew he was going to—" "I suspected," I said. Vivian confirmed it. The valet pulled up with my car. I kissed my daughter on the forehead, the way I had every night of her life when she was small. And I drove home alone through the snow, the recording still running in my purse. Let me take you back 3 weeks, to the morning everything began to unravel. I was working from home that day, cross-referencing the year-end financials for Whitaker Holdings, the company my father had founded in 1978. The company I had inherited full equity in when he died of pancreatic cancer 2 years prior. My husband was the chief operating officer. He had been, for 11 years. It had been my idea originally, a way to bring him closer to my family, to give him ownership in something we could pass down together. I had full ownership on paper. He had operational control in practice. That distinction had never mattered to me before. I loved him. I trusted him the way you trust gravity. That morning, I noticed an anomaly in the subsidiary accounts. A series of payments, each just under $10,000, going out to a vendor called Lighthouse Consulting LLC. The amounts were small enough not to trigger automatic audits, but the frequency was strange. 19 payments over 8 months. $173,000 total. I pulled up Lighthouse Consulting on the state registry. The company had been incorporated 14 months ago. The registered agent was a P.O. box in Rhode Island. The sole member was listed as a woman I had never heard of until I searched her name on LinkedIn and realized she was my husband's executive assistant's older sister. I sat at my kitchen table for a very long time, not moving, not breathing the way I usually breathed. Then I called my sister Vivian. Vivian is 6 years older than me. She is a forensic accountant who testifies in federal fraud cases. She has been divorced twice, both from men she discovered were stealing from her in different ways, and she has the kind of weary patience about these things that only a twice-burned woman can develop. "Come over tonight," she said. "Bring everything. Don't tell him anything. Don't change your behavior. Don't cry on the phone. Don't snap at him. Don't ask weird questions at dinner. Act like it's any other Tuesday." "Vivian, I don't know if I can." "Elena, listen to me. If he's stealing, he's been stealing for a while. And if he's stealing, that means he's planning to leave. And if he's planning to leave, the timeline is already set. We have days, not weeks. Do you understand me?" I understood her. That night, I sat across the dinner table from my husband while he talked about his week, and I laughed at his jokes, and I asked him about the Peterson account, and he lied to me, and I smiled, and I poured him another glass of wine. When he leaned over to kiss my forehead before bed, I let him. When he fell asleep, I went downstairs to my home office and I photographed every single document in our joint filing cabinet. At 11:30 the next morning, I sat in Vivian's condo in the Back Bay with 3 bankers' boxes of records between us. "Okay," she said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Let's see what we've got." What we had, it turned out, was catastrophic. Lighthouse Consulting was just the beginning. My husband had been funneling money out of Whitaker Holdings for nearly 3 years. Not just to Chelsea's sister, but to a half-dozen shell LLCs, all of which traced back to accounts Chelsea controlled. The total we could identify in one afternoon was just over $2.4 million, but it was the second folder that stalked my heart. It was a divorce petition, already filed, already date-stamped by the Suffolk County Family Court. It listed me as the petitioner. It was signed in my handwriting. I had not filed for divorce. I had not signed this document. I had never seen it before in my life. "He forged your signature," Vivian said quietly. "He used your signature to begin a divorce proceeding without your knowledge. Elena, do you understand what he's done? It's not just marital fraud," I said slowly. "It's a felony. It's a felony. It's multiple felonies. In Massachusetts, forgery of a legal document is a state crime. But because he's been moving money across state lines through those LLCs, and because Whitaker Holdings has federal contracts, the SEC," I whispered, "and the FBI," Vivian said. "Elena, your husband has committed federal crimes." I sat there in her condo for a very long time. I thought about the man I had slept next to for 25 years. I thought about how he had held my hand at my father's funeral. I thought about the Christmas morning Hannah was 3, when he had spent 4 hours assembling a dollhouse while I made pancakes. I thought about the person I had believed he was and the person he must have actually been underneath all of that, for all of those years, patient and quiet and calculating. And then I thought about the ring on Chelsea's finger. Because I had checked my jewelry box that morning and it was gone. The emerald my great-grandmother had smuggled out of Ireland in the lining of her coat. The ring my mother had kissed on my wedding day. He had given it to her. Something inside me, something that had been soft and forgiving and wounded for 3 weeks, went very still and very cold. "What do you want to do?" Vivian asked. "I want to destroy him," I said. "I want him to lose everything. I want him to lose everything. I want him in a federal courtroom. I want Chelsea in handcuffs. I want my grandmother's ring back, and I want my daughter to watch him realize, in real time, exactly what he has done." Vivian smiled slowly. It was not a warm smile. "Then let's get to work," she said. Over the next 18 days, I did not confront my husband. I did not change the locks. I did not call a lawyer of my own choosing because Vivian had already called hers, a woman named Deirdre McIntyre, who specialized in high-net-worth divorces involving financial fraud. Deirdre was 57, Irish Catholic, divorced from her own cheating husband 20 years ago, and she walked into the first meeting carrying a yellow legal pad and a thermos of black coffee. She sat down across from me and said, "Mrs. Whitaker, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I need you to answer honestly. First, do you want to reconcile with this man? No. Second, do you understand that what we're about to do will send him to federal prison, and that your daughter will watch it happen?" I closed my eyes. Yes. Third, are you willing to wait 3 weeks before giving him any indication that you know? Because if we move too fast, he destroys evidence. If we move too slow, he transfers assets. I need precise timing, and I need you to be able to eat dinner across from him without breaking. I opened my eyes. I can do it. And I did. For 3 weeks I kissed him goodbye in the morning. I listened to his lies about late meetings. I let him believe he was winning. And every night, while he slept, I worked. We mapped every shell company. We traced every wire transfer. We identified 17 federal contracts that had been impacted by the diverted funds, which meant his crimes fell under federal jurisdiction. Deirdre filed a sealed petition in family court asking that his forged divorce document be struck from the record, which meant, crucially, that we were still legally married on the night of the anniversary party. Everything he was about to say and do in public would be said and done by a man still married to me, still a fiduciary of my father's company, still subject to every federal statute about embezzlement and interstate fraud. Vivian reached out to an old contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The wheels of the federal government began to turn. An investigation was opened, quietly, under the assumption that nothing public would happen for 4 to 6 months. But then we learned, through a mutual friend, that my husband was planning to propose to Chelsea at our anniversary party. He was going to do it in front of every business contact I had, every family member, every old friend. He believed I had signed the divorce papers 3 months ago. He believed I was too proud and too heartbroken to make a scene. He believed he could humiliate me in public and walk away with my grandmother's ring on his mistress's finger. Deirdre laid it out for us the night before. "He thinks you're paper," she said. "He thinks you're going to fold." "What if I fold on purpose?" I said. She tilted her head. Meaning I let him do it. I let him make the announcement. I let him give the speech. I record every word of it. And then we file everything, all at once, while the paparazzi he's invited are still in the lobby. Vivian grinned. Deirdre stared at me for a long moment. Then she closed her legal pad. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, "I like the way you think." Which brings me back to the ballroom at the St. Regis, to the moment I walked out of my own anniversary party while my husband toasted the woman wearing my grandmother's ring. I drove home. I did not cry. I poured myself a glass of wine and I sat at my kitchen table and I waited. At 1:15 in the morning, my husband came home humming. Actually humming. He did not know I was sitting in the dark. He walked past the kitchen toward the stairs. "How was the party?" I said quietly. He jumped. Then he turned and stared at me. "Elena," he said, his voice shifting into the careful tone he used for meetings. "I didn't mean for you to find out that way. I should have told you weeks ago. You thought I'd signed the divorce papers." "Yes, because you thought you'd handled it." "Elena, I know this is hard, but we've been growing apart for years. And I've been more honest with Chelsea than I was ever able to be with Save It," I said. "I have a question." He waited. "Where is my grandmother's emerald ring?" He blinked. "What?" "The ring on Chelsea's finger. Where did she get it? A long silence. Then, I gave it to her. It was just sitting in your jewelry box, Elena. You never wore it. You thought it was yours to give. I thought it was ours. I looked at him for a very long time. The man I had loved. The father of my child. The thief. Go to bed, I said. We'll talk in the morning. He went upstairs. I stayed at the kitchen table until the first light came through the window. Then I got dressed. I made coffee. I kissed my sleeping husband on the forehead. And I drove to Deirdre's office. At 9:30 that morning, we filed. Everything at once. The criminal fraud referral to the U.S. attorney, the petition to void the forged divorce document, the emergency motion to freeze all assets related to the identified shell companies, a civil suit against Chelsea for conversion of stolen property, specifically including a catalog of the jewelry she had been photographed wearing over the past year, all of which belonged to me or had belonged to my mother. At 10:15, federal agents entered the Whitaker Holdings headquarters with a warrant. They escorted my husband from his corner office in handcuffs, in full view of the 30-person staff he had managed for over a decade. One of his junior associates took a video on her phone. The video was on local news within 2 hours. At 11, agents visited Chelsea's apartment. She was still in bed when they arrived. They found the emerald ring on her nightstand. They found 17 other pieces of my mother's jewelry in her closet safe, along with bank statements showing $340,000 in accounts tied to the Lighthouse Consulting show. She was arrested on charges of receiving stolen property, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and aiding and abetting embezzlement. That afternoon, a reporter from the Boston Globe called me. I did not comment. I did not need to. The facts were in the federal filings and the filings were public. The next 11 months were the hardest of my life, and I do not want to pretend otherwise. My daughter went back to Stanford for her second semester, and she called me every night, sometimes crying, sometimes not. Her relationship with her father was gone. She said she understood why I had done what I had done, and I believe she meant it. But there is a particular kind of grief in watching your child learn that a person she loved was never really that person at all. I could not take that grief away from her. I could only sit with her on the phone and listen and remind her that she was not responsible for any of it. My husband was indicted in federal court on 11 counts including wire fraud, embezzlement, forgery of a legal document, and identity theft. He pleaded not guilty. His attorney argued that I had been aware of the fund transfers, that the divorce papers had been a mutual misunderstanding, that the jewelry had been a gift between spouses. The trial lasted 4 weeks. I testified for 3 days. Vivian testified for 2. Deirdre did not testify because she was my civil attorney, but the federal prosecutor was a woman named Angela Ruiz, who had spent 12 years at the DOJ and who presented the evidence with a precision that made every juror lean forward in their seats. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. He was convicted on 9 of the 11 counts. Chelsea, who had accepted a plea deal 2 months earlier in exchange for testifying against him, was sentenced to 32 months in federal prison. She cried in court. She looked at me once, and I did not look back. My husband was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison, with restitution of $3.1 million, the full amount the forensic accountants had eventually traced to his shell companies. He will be in his early 60s when he is released. He will never hold a fiduciary position again. He will never sign another corporate document. I sat in the gallery when the sentence was read. Hannah sat next to me holding my hand. My sister Vivian sat on my other side. When the judge banged the gavel, I did not cry. I had done all of my crying already. In the quiet, over the past year, my grandmother's emerald ring was returned to me as part of the restitution. I had it cleaned and appraised. Then I put it in a velvet box and, on Hannah's 21st birthday this past May, I gave it to her. It was meant for you, I told her. Always. She wore it on her right hand at her college graduation. My mother, looking down from wherever she is, must have approved. I am the CEO of Whitaker Holdings now. My father had always told me I had the instincts for it, and he was right. I took the title the week after my husband was arrested, and I've been running the company for just over a year. Revenue is up 18%. We have hired 19 new employees, including, I am very pleased to say, 7 women in leadership roles. Because one of the things my husband did at that company, for years, was quietly pass over every qualified woman he interviewed. I have not dated. I may, someday. I am 47 years old, and my life is not over. But for now, what I want is my work, and my daughter, and dinners with my sister on Sunday nights, and the quiet of my own house at the end of a long day. The last time I saw my husband was at the sentencing. He looked at me across the courtroom, and for a brief moment I saw something in his face I had not seen in 25 years. Not love, not remorse, just recognition. He was finally looking at me, finally seeing me clearly, for the first time since the day we'd met. I nodded at him once. Then I turned, and I took my daughter's hand, and we walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon light. I survived. I rebuilt. And I want every woman who is sitting at a table tonight, wondering if the man across from her is telling her the truth, to understand something I did not understand until it was almost too late. A woman who is paying attention is not weak. A woman who is paying attention is not weak. A woman who is quiet is not defeated. A woman who smiles when she is being humiliated is not broken. Sometimes she is simply getting ready.